Amazon Game Studios hasn't had a great track record with games lately. They seem to be on a mission to consolidate their game development arm and get out of some parts of the gaming business. But what they did with this little MOBA game they announced, March of the Giants, is rather surprising. Instead of doing what a corporate giant like Microsoft or EA would do, which is lay off staff, cancel the project, and close the studio entirely, Amazon Game Studios sold the game, IP, and the studio along with it. This does happen in the industry, but not very often. So this is good news, right? The new owners of the game and the studio is Ubisoft? Hooray for Ubisoft for saving the day?
Great job!
Well, maybe not. Ubisoft themselves haven't had the best track record when it comes to smaller PC-centric game. If it weren't for that German development studios under Ubisoft and the Arno series, this is an odd business transaction, frankly, that regular Ubisoft wouldn't really consider to be a great game idea. I mean, it's like an RTS, at least when we look at things on the surface. Now, if you're wondering what the heck is March of Giants because you have never heard of it, I don't blame you. It's a free-to-play 4v4 MOBA that they announced back in August 2025. I believe they were calling it a War MOBA. Amazon Games Montreal was a brand new studio under the Amazon Game Studios label, and this was to be their debut title. It is perhaps a bit too reductive to just call this a MOBA, because I think March of Giants is adding some elements, some mechanics that aren't from a MOBA that honestly I quite like it. It's a steampunk World War I inspired setting that has giants. I guess you guessed that because it's in the title, right? Which I'm not sure what's the explanation of there being giant combatants leading the countless minions. These minions, or soldiers in this case, you have some control over them. You can command them to charge the enemy, I guess granting you some sort of damage bonus to the soldiers. The really cool bit is what they call Battleworks, gimmicky sounding, yes I know, but its implementation is more than just a gimmick. You can place turrets, defenses, and even trenches which you can then place your soldiers in. I mean, the inspiration is indeed World War I, so digging in and defending is a legit strategy. Like, this is not just a regular old MOBA, and it seems like it's something fresh. It's bringing something new to the table, shall we say. But it being a MOBA, I feel it didn't help its case in endearing itself to gamers. I do believe the MOBA genre is in a sort of stagnant state, at least in terms of new games. The big ones, Dota 2 and League of Legends, has its players and audience, which is still very massive. But every new MOBA kinda struggled, you know? It's not the sexiest strategy subgenre it once was, where every single game company wanted to make another MOBA, the next Dota. Just after its announcement, they held a closed alpha, which was overall quite positively received. It's a slower paced game that has more defensive structures. There's more RTS here than a typical MOBA. I think this would be my kind of MOBA. I might actually try this out when it's available. It's not the most wishlisted game on Steam for sure, I guess, but these free-to-play games are quite different beasts that could find its audience. It's very hard to predict how well they'll do. The people who play the big MOBAs that want something new, they might just find this a nice side game to play. And that's ultimately why I think Ubisoft wants this IP and the team behind it. It is their strategy to grow their live service offerings. Ubisoft isn't an unknown in the MOBA space, you know. They do have For Honor. Yes, that's a MOBA in the form of a third-person action game. But it's still a MOBA with minions and other players battling it out in an arena. And you'd be surprised to learn that there is a significant number of players still playing For Honor 8 years after its release. A very healthy amount of players that many games could only dream of having. I'm looking at you, Stormgate. Ubisoft has been selling a boatload of battle passes for it, and I'm guessing it's doing pretty well financially for them. And mind you, this is not even a free to play game. For Honor actually costs money. Not that much, I mean right now on sale it's pretty cheap. It's close to being free, but it's not free. Then of course we have the Ubisoft darling Rainbow Six Siege, which is still crushing it in player count. Although it was much higher in the middle of this year when they announced the big Rainbow Six Siege X update. Rainbow Six Siege is relevant in this story because the creative director for March of Giants was the creative director for Rainbow Six Siege. Xavier Marquis, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, it's Xavier, not Javier, I guess. Xavier Marquis left Ubisoft Montreal to join Amazon Game Studio and form the Amazon Montreal Studio, which, could you imagine saying bye to Ubisoft only to then end up back with them like 5 years later? But considering the fact Amazon is laying off a significant portion of their staff, including the people who worked on the MMO New World, which they recently ended all development as part of moving away from working on MMO projects and a bunch of other games, I would presume they want to shift their strategy to being a publisher rather than a game development studio, which they have announced the 2 Tomb Raider games. They are currently working with Crystal Dynamics, which they showed off the trailers at the Game Awards. Amazon owns Twitch, and that gives them a bit of a leverage in working out marketing deals with game companies. But that seems like a legit move by Amazon to leverage on their strengths and to close off this development arm of theirs. But no, I don't think we should look at Amazon or Ubisoft as heroes, the benevolent parties in this story. For all we know, it could have been Xavier Marquis who could have pulled off this deal. He could have been told the studio and the project would be shuttered, and he used his connections to find an interested party. Regardless though of how this deal came through, for March of Giants devs, I think this is good news for them, no doubt about this. Rather than closing a studio that never had the opportunity to even release their first game, that would have been brutal. I'm sure for their creative director ending back at Ubisoft, this was a small price to pay as he gets to keep his team intact and avoid any layoffs. This is actually a win for him and his team, more than Ubisoft quite frankly. But we shall see if March of Giants is able to capture a piece of that mobile pie. I would certainly love to try this game out once it's available to the public, at least for the novelty of playing a giant on a World War I steampunk battlefield, perhaps with a less toxic community. Well, one could wish. I wouldn't expect this to take too long since they already have most of the nuts and bolts working. There's a bit more refinement for a public release. I doubt Ubisoft would want to drag on the development of this game. They probably will monetize the hell out of this game as soon as possible. Anyway, do tell me, are you excited for another MOBA? Something that's trying to be different, not a Dota 2 or LoL clone. Sound off in the comments. Thanks for watching and farewell friends.